All right, really quick, I wanted to introduce this podcast here. Somebody had commented on an earlier video about this. And if you go to the YouTube channel, The Ancient Tradition, it looks like there's just 4 episodes available. But on here, there's a whole bunch. Now, I love when scholarship that is outside of the church is able to look out into things that are, not creedally based necessarily, because so often they'll explore some of these things, but then it'll just bounce into these creedal sorts of ways of viewing things. And I like when we have people like Michael Heiser, or this, what's her name, Jack, short for Jacqueline. Shoot, what was her name? Uh, anyway, you'll just have to find out. But the short of what it is, and I think you might find it interesting if you find this kind of deep dive interesting. And I was going to do something like this, but I know I wouldn't be able to do it like this. It just has so much great information. The premise of it is, uh, in short, we have all these traditions from all over the world. And this graph that you're seeing here, it's showing how, if you look at the literary studies of a lot of these, and we know that a lot of them echo, like with the great floods and things like that. And we have all these different things that have like little seeds of things that really echo between things that might have happened within Native American traditions and Japanese and Chinese and Hindu and Jewish and Greek. And this person's contention, and through her scholarship and things, and it's done so well, is that it all kind of comes from a single source. And she's a Bible believer. She believes in God, so it's like faith based. And so one of her contentions is that these different traditions, like in Egypt and things, came from this single source that would have come from the pre-flood world and from Adam specifically. And it's very interesting because like these are things that it's just hilarious to see this, because the more we go into this kind of scholarship, and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints already know this, but like the more people uncover the ancient world, the more we just soak it all in. Like we just love it. We just love it. It's amazing. And so she goes through just kind of this opening thing. I've listened to a few of them so far. I'm actually on the 4th one. Um, Ancient tradition, that was interesting. Is it possible to know God? This kind of talks about the scientific, atheism versus faith, and it really builds things up slowly, and there's a lot to get into with these episodes, but it's starting to really rip now. And this one here goes into specifically things that would really interest members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who already have this idea that the Garden of Eden is very much a temple liturgy. That whole story, and that Eden was like a temple unto itself, and has a lot of tree of life sort of stuff. And so what she is doing is she's finding all these echoing traditions and finding the similarities. But in this 4th episode, it's specifically about some readings on the Garden of Eden itself, and how like Adam and Eve were like the first priest and priestess, king and queen, first temple like ordinance workers, to give out, to start this whole thing. And her examination and her scholarship is that God would have revealed these ancient traditions and these ancient ordinances in this ancient liturgy to Adam and Eve, or even at that earliest time. Something like I just love temples. I love going to the temples, and I love the church. I love that the more we look into the more we look into ancient Judaism and ancient rituals in ancient Egypt and all these things, the more that we see just how much has been restored in these latter days. And it's just like it's hilarious to see people argue about, like, oh, well, what about horses? It's like we are so beyond caring about that gripe about horses when you go look at the scholarship. There have been horses discovered from the ancient Americas, but it's like the same recycled thing over and over. And the Book of Mormon is just a bunch of funny poems. It's like, when you understand the temple liturgy from the ancient world, like that's where we are looking, and it's like, well, he said a Jew, like that doesn't make sense. Like it's just kind of laughable, some of the gripes that come up. Really, someone needs to come up with like a really good wiki of a lot of these anti-Mormon sort of gripes that have been answered like a bajillion times. It's like, it's fine if people still have them, but I love this kind of scholarship that goes into these deep dives that just, it's not from an LDS person as far as I can tell, but it's like, it's just hilarious to see, like, we aren't afraid to look into pseudepigraphal and apocryphal and other traditions and things to find restored ancient truth. Like, we don't have to rely specifically on like the creeds and philosophies of man. It's just funny. It's just funny. Again, I could rant on just how silly it is that people would say that we should not pray to God about things when, like, that doesn't make any sense. Even biblical passages say to not lean unto our own understanding, but to ask of God. And we see that over and over. It's like, well, God already said he said what we have to do. It's perfectly clear. It's like, and people don't realize just how much they are leaning under their own understanding. But that's a wholly different thing. Go look at this website. Take a look at the podcast if you think this is interesting. I'm gonna keep going. Here's some of these other, I'm obsessed with this topic here. The Council of the Gods, more than one God. Very interesting. I can't wait to get to these because, like, I have little bits that I've uncovered and found from scholarship of a lot of these things, but I'm glad that I don't have to try to put a subpar version of what this person is already doing, and it just it seems interesting. And once I'm through more of it, I'll give kind of a final maybe a final review to see if I would still recommend it. But from what I've seen so far, it's like very, very cool. Maybe some of the conclusions for some things, I'm not sure where it'll go, but interesting. And I'm glad this person on my channel recommended it. So talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.